They say good things come to those who wait. But sometimes, waiting just means someone else will snatch your dream right out from under your nose. That's what happened to me, Sarah. I'd poured countless late nights, countless cups of cold coffee into this project. It was my baby and innovative new client acquisition strategy that would revolutionize our department. I saw it, I felt it, I knew it was going to be my ticket. The presentation date was set. I had my slides polished, my data meticulously compiled. I even practiced my delivery in front of my cat, who, for the record, seemed genuinely impressed. My manager, Mr. Harrison, had been incredibly supportive. He'd seen the raw potential in my early drafts, encouraged me to push further. He was the one who scheduled a preliminary run-through, just for our team, a week before the big company-wide reveal. That's where Mark comes in. Mark was slick. He had that effortless charm, the kind that makes people trust him instantly, even when there's nothing substantial to back it up. He was always hovering, asking questions, just curious about what everyone was working on. I, naive and trusting, had even shared some of my core ideas with him over lunch, thinking he was genuinely interested, maybe even a potential collaborator. Big mistake, huge. The day of the internal run-through arrived, and oh boy, I was buzzing with nervous energy. Mark was there, of course, along with a few other team members. So, Mr. Harrison opened the meeting and then he called on Mark. My heart actually skipped a beat. Mark stood up, walked to the projector, and began. And that's when my stomach dropped into my shoes. He clicked to the first slide. It was my template. He started talking. It was my opening line. He went through the data, the projections, the innovative concepts. Every single word, every single graph was mine. He had taken my entire presentation, repackaged it with his name on the cover, and was now delivering it as his own original work. I sat there frozen. My mind raced, trying to process the audacity, the sheer brazen theft. My face must have been beet red, then probably ashen white. I wanted to scream, to jump up and expose him right then and there. But I couldn't. Mr. Harrison was nodding along, impressed. My other colleagues were taking notes. Mark was absolutely killing it, basking in the glow of stolen brilliance. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Mr. Harrison beamed. Mark, that was exceptional. Truly groundbreaking work. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need for the upcoming promotion cycle. Promotion cycle. That phrase echoed in my ears, a cruel twist of the knife. That was my promotion. That was my idea that was supposed to get me there. Mark just smiled, a confident, self-satisfied smirk glancing directly at me for a split second, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. It was a silent challenge. He knew, and he thought he'd won. That night, I didn't sleep. The humiliation burned. The injustice was a hot, bitter taste in my mouth. But, beneath the anger, a cold, hard resolve began to form. Mark thought he could steal my dream and just walk away with a promotion. He was about to learn that some ideas, once stolen, have a way of biting back. I wasn't just going to get my idea back. I was going to take his promotion. The days that followed were a strange blend of simmering rage and meticulous planning. I couldn't confront Mark directly, not yet. That would be emotional, messy, and frankly, I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing how much he'd rattled me. Besides, how would I prove it? It was my word against his, and he'd already established himself as the genius behind the idea. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to fight fire with fire, but with a precision he wouldn't expect. My goal wasn't just to expose him, but to do it at the most impactful moment, when his fall would be the most spectacular. And that moment, I decided, would be during the final promotion reviews. My first step was damage control. I went to Mr. Harrison, feigning mild disappointment. Sir, I just wanted to ask about the feedback process for our internal presentations. I had a very similar framework developed for the client acquisition strategy, and I was hoping to refine it based on your thoughts. So I played it cool, just dropping subtle hints without outright accusing Mark. Mr. Harrison, bless his oblivious heart, just nodded. Yes, Sarah, I recall you mentioning something similar. Mark truly ran with it, didn't he? Very impressive. The words were like tiny daggers, but I kept my poker face. Next, I started compiling my evidence. Luckily, I'd been meticulous. Every draft, every preliminary data analysis, every email exchange with source material, all time-stamped, all saved. I had even created early versions of the presentation in a shared drive that Mark had access to, before moving it to my personal drive for final polish. The digital footprints were there for those who knew where to look. But evidence alone wouldn't be enough. I needed to understand the game. I started observing Mark more closely. His networking wasn't just friendly chatter, it was calculated charm. He knew how to talk the talk, drop buzzwords, and make himself seem indispensable. He was good, I'll give him that, and he was arrogant. That, I realized, would be his undoing. The promotion interviews were looming. Mark was confident, practically preening. He'd already started acting like the new head of client relations, issuing suggestions and subtly pulling rank. He even came up to me one day, completely brazen. "Hey, Sarah, I heard you're applying for the junior analyst role. Good luck with that." He smirked. He was actively trying to stomp me down, to ensure I stayed far below him. That fueled my fire even more. I decided my approach would be two-pronged. First, I would make my own application for the promotion so strong, so undeniable, that even with Mark's groundbreaking idea, I'd still be a contender. I doubled down on my other projects, delivering exceptional results, going above and beyond. I made sure my name was on every successful initiative, every positive client feedback. I didn't just want justice. I wanted to prove I was better, undeniably. Second, I needed to set the stage for Mark's unraveling. I couldn't just drop a bomb. It needed to feel organic. I subtly started asking questions in team meetings, innocent-sounding queries about the future stages of the client acquisition strategy or potential roadblocks. Questions that, if Mark truly understood the depth of the project, he should have easily answered. But he didn't. He stammered, gave vague corporate speak, or deferred. People started to notice small cracks in his facade. One afternoon, a few days before the final interviews, I saw Mark in the break room, boasting about his upcoming presentation to the promotion committee. "Just refining a few key points," he said, puffing out his chest. "Mr. Harrison says it's a shoo-in." He was practically gloating. That's when it hit me. I needed to force his hand. I needed to make him reliant on my assistance for a minor but crucial detail. I approached him, feigning helpfulness. "Hey Mark, I overheard you talking about the new client segmentation data for your presentation. I actually ran some advanced analytics on that last quarter for a different project. It might give you a slightly sharper edge in your projections. I can send you the file if you want." He hesitated, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. Then, his arrogance won out. "Oh, yeah, sure, Sarah, that'd be helpful. Just send it over." He saw an easy win, a chance to pad his presentation without doing the work. He had no idea he was walking right into my trap. The day of the promotion review arrived. The air in the office was thick with anticipation. Mark went in first, radiating confidence. I could almost hear his smooth delivery from my desk. Then it was my turn. I walked into the conference room where Mr. Harrison and two senior executives, Miss Davies and Mr. Chen, sat. I presented my work, focusing on my contributions, my successes, and critically, my independent projects that demonstrated leadership and innovation beyond the client acquisition strategy. I was calm, articulate, and confident. I didn't mention Mark. Not yet. Then came the quanda. Miss Davies, a notoriously sharp executive, leaned forward. "Sarah," she began, "your application is very strong. However, we've also seen a truly exceptional proposal for the new client acquisition strategy from Mark. It's quite comprehensive. Given your experience, what are your thoughts on its feasibility and potential challenges?" This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I took a deep breath. "Miss Davies," I began, my voice clear and steady, "I believe the core concept of that strategy is brilliant. In fact, I developed a very similar framework months ago. I have the initial drafts, the original data models, and the comprehensive research reports all time-stamped in our shared server, dating back to before it was publicly presented." Mr. Harrison's eyes widened. Miss Davies and Mr. Chen exchanged a look. I continued. I was actually quite excited to see Mark present it, as it validated many of my own findings. In fact, just yesterday, I provided him with some advanced demographic segmentation data that I'd analyzed, which I believe he incorporated into his final presentation. Then, the mic drop. The reason I offered it, I explained, was because I noticed during team discussions that while the concept was solid, there seemed to be a lack of granular understanding of the underlying data and predictive modeling. I wanted to ensure the committee had the most robust information, regardless of whose name was on the slides. The silence in the room was deafening. Mr. Harrison looked absolutely mortified. Miss Davies, however, had a glint in her eye. Mark, she said, pulling out her tablet, did indeed submit a revised presentation this morning, including some very specific demographic projections. He credited them to his recent deep dive into market trends. I simply met her gaze, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. I believe the metadata on the file I sent him would confirm its origin, Miss Davies. And you know, I'm happy to walk you through my original, more detailed models if you have any questions. The interview ended shortly after. I left the room, feeling a sense of calm satisfaction I hadn't felt in weeks. I hadn't screamed, I hadn't accused. I had simply presented the facts, quietly, methodically, letting the evidence speak for itself. Later that afternoon, the office grapevine exploded. Mark was called into a meeting with Mr. Harrison and Miss Davies. The door was closed, but the muffled, increasingly agitated tones suggested a very unpleasant conversation. The next morning, the official announcement came. Mark was not promoted. In fact, he was given a formal warning for unprofessional conduct and quietly reassigned to a less visible, less impactful role. He was humiliated, stripped of the very ambition he'd stolen. And me? A week later, Mr. Harrison called me into his office. He looked tired, but also genuinely apologetic. He admitted he'd been blindsided, that he should have paid more attention. He praised my quiet integrity, my strategic thinking, and my undeniable talent. And then he offered me the promotion, head of client relations, the very position Mark had coveted, the one he thought he'd stolen. I didn't just get my idea back, I got his future. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about justice. It was about proving that integrity, hard work, and quiet intelligence can, in the end, outmaneuver even the slickest of con artists. And sometimes, the best way to win is to let your actions speak so loudly they deafen the competition.